Hello, everyone. Today we have Glenn McWhinney here, who's the creator of the first WWX course. Glenn, how are you today?
Hi, Emanuel. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Great to be here, thanks.
I'm really happy to have you here on this stream. I'm excited to dive deep into the motivations behind your course and, just hearing your story and, sharing it with the community.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm normally on the other end of this, just watching some great content, so hopefully I've got some good things to share with you today.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and how you got introduced to low code and no code.
Cool. So
then we can later get to the course. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I was originally a web designer, web developer, and actually, used to build sites by hand with code back in the day. And I moved into web app development with Ruby on Rails. So that was quite a while ago. Used to build a lot of custom apps for people and really enjoyed it, but it was just such a slow process. I'm a distinctly average developer. So as I was building these things out, I was just thinking maybe this isn't for me, or there's got to be a better way. And it just wasn't really anything available for me at the time that I got on with. So I moved into things like e-commerce and digital marketing and just moved away from code and building apps completely. And I did that for about 7 years. And then in 2018-19, no code was starting to become a thing, and it kind of just caught my attention again, and started following it. And I was sort of tentative at first, playing around with Zapier and all of the sort of the gateway apps that everybody knows. And I just suddenly thought, well, I already know Webflow. I already love Webflow. This is a great tool. That's kind of been doing no code for a while anyway. What else is out there? And just started discovering all these different tools that are available, from the Adalo to Glide to everything. So I just sort of threw myself in to this, to the point where I completely flipped what I was doing in my small agency that I'd launched, from doing digital marketing and e-commerce into no code. So we took on no code projects. We were building projects for people, building our own stuff, and just really geeking out for about 2 years. And then it started getting a bit more serious and building more sophisticated, mission critical type systems with no code. And I'm like, oh, this is getting serious. And then I discovered, Xano, and the very first version of Wized was there as well. And it just all started coming together for me, and I knew that I was back in my comfort zone, but somehow it was like 10 times easier than it was last time I was building stuff. So that's how I got into no code.
So you started as a traditional developer, you moved away from it because it was too slow, and then your passion for building apps got reignited once you discovered no code.
Exactly. Yeah. It was like I would never have moved away from it in the first place if it had got easier, but over the years it just didn't feel like it was getting easier. So I took that, almost like that break from it all, and coming back was just a real joy because it had just moved on so much and everybody was so excited. I remember going to No Code Conf in 2019 in San Francisco, and the whole room was just energized. People were just so excited about the possibilities. And I caught the bug as well, and we've all been on that train ever since.
Amazing. And before launching the WWX course, you've been also active in the community before, and you had some initiatives. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so, one of the ones was No Code Kids, where we were looking to get no code into schools, beginning in the UK, and that worked out pretty well. The kids really wanted to do it, but it's hard trying to break into a curriculum, when schools are tied down as to what they can teach. So we sort of found a bit of a way in, and that worked for a while. So that was a really good initiative. Really enjoyed doing that, and that's sort of going on in the background. But that was one of the sort of more fulfilling sort of community projects that I've been involved with.
Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction. I'd like to know more about what inspired you to create the WWX course, to create the Webflow, Wized, and Xano course.
Okay. So I think there may be quite a few people that relate to this, that when you build with Webflow, it's an incredible tool and the CMS gives you a lot of functionality, but you get to the point in your learning and in the kind of sophistication of the websites that you're building where you really want more. And FinSuite attributes came along, fulfilled a massive kind of gap there, and everybody was enjoying that. And we are still all enjoying that. It's an amazing tool and it keeps getting better. But there's still something else a little bit kind of missing from that. We need a more powerful back end. And in my mind, sort of more flexibility as to what we can build. So this is the traditional coder in me trying to break through all the time, saying, I don't want to be limited. I want to just build the interface that I want, the features that I want, the experience that I want, but I don't want to compromise on design. And there are other no-code tools out there, I won't mention any names, where design is a bit of an issue for them, but they've got lots of functionality. And we're the other way around with Webflow. We've got all this design power, but not as much functionality. So I was looking for a while, and Wized, the first version of it was good, but it just wasn't quite stable enough and didn't quite deliver what it needed to. So when you guys and Alex took over the project and rebuilt it from the ground up, it was just an incredible change. You know, it was a real shift from what it was, the way it worked and what it was, to what we see now. And it's just got better and better and better over the past sort of year to 2 years. So that's that bit for fulfilling the functionality. And then, of course, you need a backend to store data. Now, you can use Airtable. You could even use Webflow CMS. But for my mind, when I used to code, I always looked for a backend that was sort of scalable, performant. It could handle the number of API requests that you're throwing at it. And I wanted that same level of flexibility and power. So I had been toying with Xano on previous projects. And when I saw that Xano was an integration with Wized, with Wiz 2, I just thought, okay, this feels like the 3 tools that I've been waiting to come together for years, possibly my whole career. So I just jumped in and started playing with them, using them. I was lucky enough to be on the beta team with Wiz 2, so that gave me access to the latest and greatest features, and it just all worked so well together that I thought, this is what maybe a lot of us have been waiting for. This is what I'm putting out there, is that perhaps this is the stack, as we call it, the WWX stack, that is going to be able to fulfill a lot of our needs. So that was the sort of the impetus behind it, wanting to move away from certain technologies, move towards something really powerful and flexible, but still stay in that no code, low code mindset. So not having to go really deep into a complex type of database or having to do too much code. I still wanted to keep it as no code as possible. So that's how I've got to where I am.
And that also explains why you decided to choose Xano as opposed to Firebase or Supabase.
Yeah, I mean, Xano, it's one of those tools which people will look at and say, I don't want to pay that amount per month. But when you actually look at what it gives you an incredible amount. So pretty much unlimited records, unlimited API requests, all kinds of features that you can only really get normally when you're building a backend with code or with specialist knowledge anyway. And Xano has come along and actually extrapolated that and created all of these functions and flows and filters and APIs and everything that you need to actually build all the stuff that you should be building on the back end and not on the front end with Webflow. And Wiz just sits in the middle, coordinating all of that. So anything coming into Webflow from Xano is handled by Wiz. Anything going to Xano from Webflow, like forms, etc., that data is being handled by Wiz. And it's this conduit just orchestrating all of the data and all of everything just flowing around within the system. So it's a highly integrated, very, very fast stack. So I thought, now that I know this, I need to tell others about it, right? So how many Webflow people are out there, especially Webflow designers who have refused to move to platforms like Bubble for good reason, because they're used to Webflow. It works really well. It's very compliant with everything. Why would you want to go and learn another tool just to build a web app? So my mission, I guess, is to get as many Webflow designers to become Webflow developers in the true sense of the word as possible by employing all of these sort of data-backed features, building whatever you want to build, whatever's in your mind, basically, where you could design it the way you want to design it in Webflow, and Xano looks after all the stuff behind the scenes, and then Wized is that magic in the middle.
How would you describe the stack to someone who knows Webflow but doesn't know much about Wized and Xano?
So I think what I would say to a web designer who has not yet ventured into this territory is to say that you've already done quite a lot of this already without knowing it, by using the CMS collections. So CMS collections really is a database, and the items are your records in a traditional database, and the binding that you're doing on the screen using Webflow's native tools is kind of what Wized is doing. So you've already got these concepts in your head. You just haven't yet learned that other systems are capable of doing that with Webflow as well. So what I do with the course is actually go into each of these, like the front end, the back end, and Wized in the middle, and I talk about what each part of the system is responsible for. So it's teaching kind of how to think more like a developer rather than just in the front end with Webflow as a designer. And I think the reason why this is really key is because even though these might be new concepts, and some people will call themselves non-technical, right? Even though I think if you're using Webflow, you're pretty technical, right? Because it's not the easiest of tools to use. And as I say, using collections, you're already doing a lot of this stuff. But to learn what's really going on behind the scenes by learning things like APIs and requests and responses, and even some more technical coding type words like arrays and objects, it doesn't have to be a really complex course to actually get to the point where you can do something quite sophisticated. So what we do on the course is we build a web app, which is like it's an e-commerce app basically that sells digital products, and it connects with Stripe, and the communication with Stripe comes back to Xano. Xano communicates with the front end with Webflow via Wized, and those three parts of the puzzle are all working together in harmony. And it's because of the fact that we learn how that works. Why does that work like that? And in actual fact, if you can learn these three tools in this stack, you could pretty much swap out almost any part of this, and you could go and do it elsewhere. You could, if you've learned the Xano bit, you could bring in Superbase. If you've learned Webflow really well, you could use hand-coded HTML if you wanted to, as long as you know how data attributes work. So there's the other part of the mission here is actually just really learning web development through these three tools, and then actually maybe straying into other areas of web development that you wouldn't otherwise have tackled before. There are people on the course, for example, that say, from what I've learned so far, I really now want to go and learn JavaScript. And I say, fantastic. That's a brilliant thing to do. If you want to do it, and you know that it can enhance the work you're doing, especially in Wized, then go and learn JavaScript for sure. It's a good thing to do, but there's no requirement to learn the whole of JavaScript to actually build a web app.
I think to add to that, something that's been a really interesting quote from Bailey, who's also big in the Wized community. He said, with the new embed, with the new version of Wized, you can write as much code as you want to, but you don't have to. So if you're non-technical, if you don't know any JavaScript, you can really build a lot of stuff without knowing how to code. Or you could even ask ChatGPT if you need to tweak something small. But if you're coming from a technical background, if you need to do something really complex in Wized, you can. You have run functions, you have the Wized API, and you can really write complex JavaScript there and interact with the whole Wized configuration.
And that's what I say, Emanuel, to the students is you're used to having 100% design flexibility with Webflow. It's a luxury, to have that. It's such a powerful tool. And the last thing you want to do is go and learn a tool for building more sophisticated websites or web apps, which restricts you in some way. So with these three tools, this stack, you're not restricted at all, pretty much. The Wiz JavaScript that it uses is it's open, completely open-ended. It's vanilla. It's the editor allows you to write whatever JavaScript you want to write. But as you say, the built-in tools actually get you like 3/4 of the way there, if not even more.
And your design can be uncompromised also. That's the beauty of it.
Mm. Exactly.
What would you say, like, is the transformation that your students go throughout the course? Like, where are they on their journey when they join your course, and how does the course change them?
It obviously varies depending on the person, but what I'm seeing most is this overcoming of sort of self-limiting beliefs. So this idea that you can't build something because you're not a coder, you're not a developer, you're not a whatever. And I think the course and the tools actually enable you to overcome that. So just the other day, one of the students posted on X about how happy he was because he'd managed to get data to come from a database through Wized and rendered on the page. And when you say it like that, it sounds simple, but there's a few things you need to know before you can actually do that. But he learned them. He got to that point, and it's like, I remember it happening to me, and I said the same to him. It's like a little epiphany. You have these little mini epiphanies where when you've finally done it for yourself and it works in front of you, nobody else has done it, you haven't lent on a developer friend or had to just hack something together from online, you've actually learned it and applied it and it works. It's a really good feeling. It's like when you first learn interactions in Webflow or something like that, and you get something to work. These are all important skills for us to learn to keep advancing, to keep interested in being a web designer / developer, to do deeper work and more interesting work, and to feel like you can really do this stuff, because it's difficult when you have to hand your designs over to a developer, especially someone who's maybe not as sensitive around the way you've designed something, and you leave them to hack that apart and make mistakes, and then you've got to try and somehow come back from that together, and it's difficult. There's a friction there, and the whole no-code movement is about removing that friction, relying on somebody else, and you could do it yourself. And then when you do it yourself, and you can do something that a developer can do, you feel like you've leveled up. There's something more about your work and about what you're able to build. And I think that's pretty evident from the students that are going through this. They feel good about being able to overcome those kind of beliefs, and actually, just from that point, build anything you like. And it's pretty empowering.
Yes, it's like a journey through modern web development. You're learning how all the pieces fit together, and you're essentially becoming technically literate through this journey. You understand how API works. You understand that you can connect your Webflow instance to pretty much anything out there. And it's very, very empowering to learn about these concepts.
For sure. And it's one of the reasons why I did an e-commerce app as the first app, because I wanted people to be thrown in the deep end, basically. And the mystery around transactions and just sessions and all kinds of things that you don't normally think about in your day-to-day Webflow work. I sort of throw them all in there and I say, come on, let's tackle this. Let's look at API documentation. Let's look at what's going on here when we talk to Stripe. What does Stripe do at the end of a transaction? What is a webhook? How do we handle that? And it's a lot. It's a lot to learn when you don't know any of it, which is why it's a fairly extensive course. It's like over 14 hours of video kind of explanations on this course, as well as text. So it's not a small, have a go kind of course. What I really wanted to do is create a foundation. So if you can learn this and do this, you can really build something proper. And then the second course and other courses will actually build on this. So the second course, for example, is looking into the AI tools. How do we hook into those and build apps that can be enhanced by the AI APIs that are available to us? How can we make use of those? Because again, that's like a hot topic at the minute, and why wouldn't you want to learn that right now? That's fun, if nothing else. But you could also make some money from that if you came up with a good idea. And again, you don't want to go and spend 10, 20, 30 plus $1,000 with somebody else when you could do it yourself. And you can actually experiment and find out whether these ideas actually have any legs without actually taking the risk and investing in something and potentially losing quite a lot of money. So it's a good investment in yourself and your business and testing out your ideas as much as anything else. So that's one of the big keys of this.
Yeah. And it scales too. That's the beauty of it. You don't need to swap it after a month. You don't need to hand code everything because the application can't scale. It can scale. And, there's apps out there that receive hundreds of thousands of clicks. And the whole stack, the WWX stack, can easily handle that. We've got here some really beautiful testimonials from your students. I don't know, Glenn, if you saw the chat, but Greg wrote, I'm currently doing Glen's course and it's amazing. I highly recommend it to anyone looking to progress into web apps after learning Webflow. And then Christopher wrote, Glen's course shows you the possibilities, how to achieve them, and gives you the confidence to start and stay at it. Really great course. And then we have Noelia, and she also wrote, hi, Glen, I'm in the WWX and it's great. Glen is super hands-on. He's helped me work through complex issues and that were outside of the scope of the course. And Koi is asking, when is the next time that students can join your course?
First of all, thank you, students, for saying that. It is an absolute pleasure teaching people like you. It really is a privilege sitting in a position where you can pass on this knowledge and actually have people feel that good about what they're learning. So I really appreciate that. Next time to join the course. So the current course the current group is group 3. It isn't full at the moment, but I fully expect it to be full soon. The reason being is the price will be going up within the next few weeks to a month tops. So I want to make sure that definitely FinSuite Plus people get a chance to get the course at the current price, which is the lowest it will definitely ever be. And then we'll be launching group 4 at the new price. So if anybody is interested, I'm not doing this as a sales pitch, but if anybody is interested, do let me know. And the best way to do that is to go to buildanything.online. There's a wait list there. If you put your name in there, you'll get an email come back and tell you it's been received, etc. And then I'll get as many people in on the current low price as possible before the price goes up. So that's, best I can do for everyone right now.
Cool. And what can the students expect? Could you walk us a little bit through the structure of the course? Like, how do you balance theory with practical application?
Yeah, so I call it the 3 C's. The courses, clonables, and community. So course bit is obvious. As I say, lots of video walkthroughs. There's text in there. You pretty much see the whole app, like every little corner of the app through those videos. And if there's anything that doesn't make sense, or there's features that aren't covered in the app, because of course there's just so many that you could cover, it's difficult to do everything. That's when we end up talking in the community. So you get invited into your group, which is a corner of my community called Live the Flow Life. And within there, you're with your fellow cohort members, group members. I try to keep it to a group of about 30, but it could go over. And you can all help each other in there or get access to me. I try and, as Noelia said, I try and help as much as I can in there anyway. But I also like to see people helping each other, because somebody that's just learned that last week is quite excited to share that with somebody else. So that's really nice. The clonables bit is how you get going without having to sort of struggle. So for example, the Xano clonable is actually called a snippet, and you install that in your free Xano account. You can have a paid account if you want, but you don't need one for the course. And that will get you set up with all of the database structure and some other sort of basic bits and bobs. The Webflow clonables are what I call, one's called complete, one's called bare bones. The complete one is the complete Webflow app, marked up with the attributes and everything ready to go. Some people prefer to learn like that, dissecting something that's already built. So I supply that as a full app to do whatever you want with. And that's the same for Wized. You've got the complete Wized project as well as the bare bones projects. And the bare bones really are just the sort of the scaffold, if you like, to get going. And then as you're learning, as you're going on bit by bit, we do it page by page. So we build page by page and all the features on that page. We jump between Xano to Webflow to Wized. That's the order I do it in as I'm teaching everything, because I believe that you should have a good appreciation for the way the data is structured and the way the information needs to be stored and related first. Then we create the components and mark up those components in Webflow, and then we hop to Wiz to then tie it all together. So I just kind of keep going around in a loop as we build feature by feature, page by page. And so far I've had very good feedback as an approach. So it's going well.
So your process isn't to build the whole backend, but instead to just build the backend for a particular feature and then move over to creating that in Webflow and finally interlinking the backend and the front end with Wized. Yeah. Wized is also the front end, but it's sort of like a bridge between Webflow and Xano.
Exactly. What I've done is I've left the database table structures in place, even on the bare bones clonable for Xano. And actually, it's then the student's responsibility to build out the APIs. So I didn't want to put too much emphasis on having to do everything, because there's a lot to learn. And trying to build everything from scratch when you're building an app which has enough functionality in it that you're learning all of the key concepts, it's a lot. So I've tried to help people along a little bit without actually spoon feeding, because then you don't learn anything. So it's a difficult kind of balance, a difficult tightrope to walk. But as you know, as an educator, Emanuel, but you try and get the balance right and then ask for feedback.
Yeah, it's important for the students to actually try things, fail at it, then search for those answers and so on. Because if you just spoon feed every answer, then there's no learning happening. They feel like, okay, I got this, but they haven't gone through the struggles. And you learn the most when you actually fail and then you find the answer.
Yeah, agreed. Plus the fact it just feels so much nicer. I think when you learn something yourself and you really have had to figure out just that last bit that's missing, you have done that. You've come up with that solution. You have been creative, and we're all creative people, especially Webflow people. Very, very creative. So the last thing you want to do is actually be overly prescriptive about things. So I say that throughout. This is one way to do it, and actually now that you've got these concepts under your belt, think about other ways to do it. Or why are you coming across this problem? How do we solve this problem? The classic example I've got in the course is how Noelia's going to love this one. How do you solve the problem between the data coming back from Xano and being presented as a grid in Webflow, and you've got pages of information to go through? So you've got 2, 3, 4 pages of information. How do you navigate through that information and actually then apply something like a filter at the same time. It's harder than it sounds. When you're doing it with the CMS and say for three attributes, you're dealing with the front end pretty much. It's a different kind of issue. When you're dealing with data from Xano, you've got to think about the communication back to that back end all the time, and it's one of those sort of classic problems that you need to be able to solve.
Nice. So there's like a lot of space for students to solve different problems as well there.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the other important thing that I found is that the vast majority of people coming towards this are fully invested in it. So not only because they're active, and I can tell how into it they are because of the community, but I've got the stats. I can actually see how people are progressing through the courses, how many people are completing the course, and it's just really. It's really impressive, actually, because I didn't expect stats like that. I thought people would maybe sign on and kind of come back to it in 3 months or maybe never. And that's really not the case. I think the majority of people coming in are getting involved, getting stuck in, getting on with it, and progressing really, really well through the material. So they're obviously spending a lot of free time doing this. Some may be doing it at work, but I think a lot of people, they're doing this, in their free time. And when you've been doing this kind of work all day and then you go and do it in your free time as well, that's inspirational to me. That's what you need to do if you want to get ahead, I believe. It's like, how much of that extra effort can you put in to your own skills and your business or whatever it might be. There are people not necessarily coming out of this course, but there are people who are learning WWX who are launching agencies as WWX agencies. And I think that's really telling as to how powerful these tools are, because you're then directly competing then with traditional software development houses who are charging a lot of money. So I think there are a lot of people who get this, that get why this is important. And it really is the first time we've been able to do this. I've said it for sort of 6-9 months now. I've been saying it on podcasts and things like that, is that Webflowers haven't had this before. This really is a very unique opportunity, and it's the first time we've all been given access to it. So I think we owe it to ourselves to dive into it, whether you do it through a structured course like mine or just by yourself. There's also some great free content out there. Your content, Emanuel, is amazing. YouTube has some really good Webflow. Webflowers putting their content out there to share. We should just be soaking it up basically, and doing as much as we possibly can with it. So that's my view.
What would you say are the biggest challenges that students are facing, beginner students, and what are the biggest challenges that like technical students are facing? So, people from a no-code background and people from a coding background, like what are the different challenges that they are facing with this stack?
To be honest, the people from a technical background, especially who code, will get on with this more quickly. They will find it easier because the concepts that are being introduced in these three tools are very closely, just like Webflow is very close to the HTML and CSS specification. Xano uses concepts and language that's very close to what you would do if you were building traditional backends, whether you're looping over data or using variables or whatever it might be. So there's language that a coder would have that would map over quite quickly and easily to Xano, and they would be able to pick that up more quickly. But I personally don't think that the coder will be able to do the job any better than a non-technical person once that person has learned the concepts, because Xano isn't a coding platform. It's still restricted on purpose. So it will give you a certain number of ways to go about things, certain number of functions, filters, etc. If you learn the top 10% of those even, you'll be able to do most of your work. The fact that it's got all this other stuff going on behind the scenes is very powerful, but you may never use it. It's like using Microsoft Word. You probably only use 10% of Microsoft Word. So I think that is a difference. It's all about speed, but not capability. And it's the same with Wized. I think with Wized, again, it's very visual. You may not know about these concepts yet, but once you've learned them, you can build these features out pretty visually, using forms, using, data in the right place and labels in the right place. And you've got the support of obviously not just the Wiz team, but other people learning this stuff at the same time. We've got your videos, we've got stuff I'm doing, we've got stuff other people are doing. Everybody's sort of trying to share as much as possible at the moment to get everybody up to speed. And again, I think it's just the only limitations of what you put on yourself. I think if you're used to dealing with design, visual design, and you're not comfortable dealing with data and those kind of programming principles, then there's some amount to learn, but you shouldn't be put off by it. And actually, it may not be even as interesting to you as doing design work, but if it gives you superpowers, isn't it worth learning? I think that's what I come down to. I mean, I'm not a great designer, but I'm quite happy to learn design and do design courses to try and be better at design, because my natural orientation is towards more technical. Using ChatGPT and other ways to figure out code to insert into your Wized project, a lot of the students do that, and a lot of them have great success with it. So even though you may not understand fully how a piece of code works, it doesn't mean that you can't use it, and it's not difficult to do. But you have to know what to prompt. So there's a certain amount of information that you have to learn, and then that is the ability to then talk the right language with ChatGPT, and then it will give you the right code. So I think it's a great learning assistant where they're giving you information, but you're still having to figure out like what that code does ultimately. But as long as it works, I mean, that's what a lot of junior programmers do for the first however many years of their lives, is they'll copy and paste code from Stack Overflow, and they won't even really know how it works. I'm not advocating it, but it's not uncommon to do that. So Build Anything Online is just the site for explaining everything that we've just talked about. So there's nothing particularly new here that we haven't just said, but worth a read through anyway. As I say, there's a wait list there to put your name into. Behind the scenes, this is the product that we build on the course, which is codenamed WCC001. And you'll see it's very simple. There are just 4 tables in here. And we've got an order table, product category table, and a user table. And I've kept it fairly simple on purpose, because I believe that there are enough concepts to cover in just a simple database like this that you don't need to be any more complex. But what it does do is actually still pretty impressive. So in terms of your products, this is where you set up your products in the Xano backend, and each of these products that you see are linked to a unique product in Stripe. So you set up your products in Stripe as well. The Stripe price ID is what then identifies the product between the two platforms. You can put what you like in here, the descriptions, long descriptions. Obviously, you'd want the price to be the same. You can put images in, you've got a category, and you've got download URLs. So there are a couple of more advanced features on the end of this table here to do with relationships and to do with how you store data in the tables. And I won't go into that now, but that's just an example of what you'll see when you go into the way the tables work. And when you come to doing your orders, you'll see that there are a whole lot of orders in here. This is all dummy data, and these are real orders that have come from a Stripe test account and have been fed into the Xano table in the back end. So what we're doing effectively is saying, even though Stripe is your platform for taking payments, you still want to use Xano as your central single source of truth. So when these orders are completed, or not completed for that matter, you want to be able to track them and actually make sure that you're storing the data that you need in the organization. So you don't jump off to Stripe every 5 minutes to pull out a bit of information. You're storing it here. So I teach how we do that. And it's all via the Stripe checkout. just working through quickly because I don't know how long we've got, but in terms of the Webflow side of things, it's really straightforward. For people that haven't seen Wized yet, what you're doing is you're identifying elements of the screen which you want Wized to be able to use when it's feeding in data or pulling through data from, say, a form. So the way we do that is just by marking up these, basically, by using custom attributes. So you'll probably use the attributes before using the FinSuite attributes. This is the same kind of thing, except we call all of these with the key of Wized. So we just put the name of the name of let me do it, of Wized, and then the value, whatever you want the value to be. Now the value is just a label, and then Wized makes use of that label to identify it in the project, which we'll have a look at in a sec. But then when you go to anything here, let's go to, say, the products screen. If I was just to show you this a second, you'll see that it pulls through a set of products, those products we just looked at in Xano, into a list, into a grid. This is all Webflow. None of this is generated by Wized. It's just all held in Webflow. But when you actually look in the Webflow project, you're going to see the skeleton version of that, which is similar to how you work with Webflow collections, and that you have a single element there and then you loop over and you do things. But you can see here that first of all, I'm using a component, and secondly, I've got all these different elements all marked up in here, like the product category, the product price, etc. So by the time you get over into Wized is then actually looking at these individual elements with attributes, and it's trying to do something with them. So in this case, it's saying, when I loop over all of my products from Xano, I want to show the right price in here for product 1, the name, the description, and its image. That's product 2, product 3, etc. So how do we do that? Well, this isn't a tutorial, but basically we have a way to actually pull those products through from Xano. And this is where some of the concepts come in, like learning about API methods like get, being able to pass through parameters, things like that. But you can see nothing particularly complex. And then when you actually look at the data that comes back to you from Xano, it comes back in this convoluted form called JSON that nobody can read, but Wized can read it. So when we come to actually say, okay, on my products page, I need to render those out. So I go into a particular action here of rendering a list of products. It's saying that for every product item, I'm going to render the list, and I'm going to say, well, where's that data coming from? And you'll see that this is the same as we looked at a minute ago, where it was getting products, and it's just rendering out those data items. So in terms of no code versus low code, that's pretty minimal what you have to know to render a list of items out. So that's just an example of an action and how it works within Wized. And then when you actually build the rest of the product out, you get things like the login, the authentication. You can log in there. It will actually take you through to what are my purchased products. I can go to my profile. I can change my image. I can do things in there. Or if I'm an admin person, I can actually go to an admin dashboard, and it will show me all kinds of graphs and things like that. So we go over all of that on the course. And it's a simple looking app, but quite a lot of concepts, as I say, behind the scenes.
So yeah, now you got a quick overview of Glenn's teaching style.
Yeah, I try and keep it. I try and keep it as that was pretty fast. I don't talk that fast, by the way, on the videos. Take a lot more time. I try and imagine that I'm sitting in your seat. Basically, you're learning this for the first time, and this is some of these things are new, and like I don't want to completely overwhelm you. I want you to have those little light bulb moments as you're going along. So I break it down, and we do it bit by bit by bit, as I say, feature by feature, page by page, and by the end of it, you've built this app basically. So it's it's a honor to be able to do this. Honestly, I think it's a real privilege to be a teacher of any kind, and I want this to be something that's truly commercially valuable to everybody that does it. it's not just an academic exercise. This is something that should feed into your work and into your life, and whether it's making you more money or just doing more interesting projects, as I say. But it's an amazing opportunity that we've all got thanks to the Wiz team, the FinSuite team, and this product. So hopefully more of you will appreciate WWX as time goes by. If I can help in any way, let me know. But yeah, that's the short version.
Amazing. And which charting library are you using here?
That's a good question. I can't remember now. I'll have to go look it up. Graphy, that's it. It's Graphy. So it's a really lovely new product. Their API only came out probably, I don't know, 6 months ago or something. And just to point on that, I think a lot of what I cover on the course is to say, as long as a product has an API, you can use it. You may not use it directly from within Wized. You may decide to or have to use it within Xano. But regardless of whether you're using it on either side, as long as it's got an API, you can make use of it, which just suddenly opens up the world of possibilities to you, because you're not working within the confines of what Webflow can offer anymore, or what third-party libraries can give to you. Even though they're powerful, all of a sudden you're saying, well, no, I want to bring in ChatGPT and I want to do this with graphs and I want to do this. You can do it. So it's just about imagination and actually getting it to work. You know, that's the tricky bit. But yeah, with things like Wized, and Xano, it's a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah, to continue on that note, what do you think is going to be the impact that your course is going to have on the web app development ecosystem and, you know, the Webflow ecosystem?
I think my hope is that the labeling that we've currently got around web designer, web developer, technical, non-technical, my hope is that those sort of start to dissolve a bit. You know, can we not get caught up in those labels? Can we just do as much as we want to do or we're capable of doing right now, and be able to work as a team where you've all got complementary skills and you've got skills that overlap? And, you know, we see collaboration increasing all the time, whether it's within Webflow or in Figma or whatever. And it's just such a pleasure to be able to work with other people on a project. And I'm working on a project at the minute. A couple of people are here in the chat, I think, and it's a pure delight to be able to all know what's going on. You're all on the same page. You all understand the language, the concepts. So even though I may not be doing the Wized development work today, I could maybe do some of it next week, or at least I understand what's going on. And I think that's what I want to get to, is not have this distinction between a designer and a developer, but actually we're just all using a set of really powerful tools together. So that's the big thing, and just confidence building. The thing I always say to people is start small. So one of our students, Alaba, he won't mind me mentioning him, went off when he came out of the course. He went off and built a film app. So you search for a film and it brings back all the films, and you can look at the details, and it's got trailers and ratings and all this kind of stuff. We didn't do that on the course. That was him saying, now I know how to do this, so I'm going to go and build this app that I've always wanted to build, which is a searchable film database, basically. And it's all using WWX, and he's had a blast building it. I don't know whether he's launching it commercially to make money or not, but he could. He may as well try. And I think that's the point, is you could build these small apps, little micro apps, or even SaaS apps using this technology, and actually just have a go, see what works. And if that doesn't work, try something else, build something else. These things are almost throwaway. They're so not easy to build, but they're easy enough to build that you could put a certain amount of effort in, launch it as an MVP, try it out. Is it something that you want to run? Is it something people want to buy? And just find out. So you could do that yourself.
Yeah, and the app that he built, it's actually on YouTube. So he not only created this app, but he also made a tutorial about it, and he passed the knowledge forward, which is really amazing.
He did, and again, I didn't encourage him to do that. This is what happens when you learn something that you know is valuable. You feel compelled to pass it on to somebody else, rather than keeping it to yourself. And he's a great example of that. And then, of course, you get busy and you do less of it because you're suddenly using this stuff commercially, and you're inundated with work. And I happen to know that Alaba does do commercial work now in the WWX area, so he's a good example of this. But yeah, it's such a pleasure to see what people are sharing out there. I can see Anoy here as well in the chat. He's doing amazing work. If anybody's not watching what he's putting out on YouTube, you're missing out. You should be watching that as not just a starting point. You can learn a heck of a lot just by what Anoy's doing.
Yeah, Onoy was recently here as well on the show, and if you missed that show, just go on YouTube and watch it. He really shared a lot about his process and the amazing builds that he's created, and yeah, it's definitely worth the watch.
Cool.
How do you plan to evolve the course in the future? Because it's clear that you're adding more and more to it as the time comes, and new cohorts are coming in. Do you have a vision for it, like in which direction you're going?
Kind of. I think keeping up is the first thing. So obviously the platforms all change, all three of them. Wized will probably change the most, I think, because it's still early stages, but even Xano changes pretty quickly. So I anticipate having to redo the course probably once a year. But rather than evolving the foundation course, what I think I will do is continue with the original plan, which is to do subsequent courses that build on top of that foundation. So the idea is that everybody goes through the first one, and then you can pick and choose then which one you do after that. So if AI floats your boat, then go for that one. I'm looking at doing another one, which is about building an LMS. I know everybody's kind of doing this, but I've got a real need for that, actually, even for myself. So an LMS plus community aspect to it, plus course, plus payment, plus all the rest of it. I kind of like that as my own platform. And I've built a version of that before for the No-Code Kids project, but I'd quite like to redo that now as a Wiz 2 Embed 2 project, and do it for this community. So I'm kind of I would be building it for my purposes, but also for the community and also as course content. So that's another course. So there's so many things that I could do with this. I'm actually opening it up to people to say, kind of vote, what would you all like to do, and we'll do that. So I want to do sort of shorter courses, but quite in depth in that particular area, and I think that might be quite useful for people.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really cool. And for those of you who don't know, LMS stands for Learning Management System. That's similar to Teachable, Udemy, etc. And you can actually build this with Wized and Xano and Webflow.
Yep.
I think we're sort of running out of time, but it is one question that I wanted to ask also, and it's what advice would you give to someone who's entering the low-code space?
I think the biggest bit of advice is, I'm biased here, but is to follow some structure in terms of learning. So there is a lot of information out there, useful information, and you could definitely piece it all together if you're that way inclined. But sometimes you may not be learning the right thing, or you're desperately searching for something. It's one of those cases if you don't know what you don't know. So when you come on a course, a structured course, the instructor has obviously tried to cover all the things that they feel like you really need to know. So it's you're handheld through that process. I think when you come at it just yourself and you're a self-learner, and you like learning off YouTube, cool, go for it. It might take you longer is all. And maybe you might miss out on some of the key things that you could have picked up earlier on. But each to their own, right? And but my advice is just don't be daunted by it. Whichever works well for you, just learn that way. And I'd love to see you in the community and in a group, and to teach everything I know. And I really do try and do that. You know, I don't want to hold back on something. If I can help and I can pass that on, then I'll just do that. There's no point holding anything back. But yeah, I think that's my best advice. And yeah, just have some confidence. You shouldn't be expected to know this stuff overnight. It does take a bit of time to learn, and give yourself that time. Don't be hard on yourself. Just take the time. You will get there, and anybody can do it. I genuinely believe that.
I think so too. And in so many moments when I was learning JavaScript, I felt stupid and I felt like I just can't learn that. But eventually I pushed through that initial pushback, and after a couple of months later down the line, it just all started falling together in place. And once I came back to working with Webflow and doing all this stuff, suddenly that knowledge that I gained during those months opened so many possibilities, which, completely transformed my career. So, if it feels hard at moments, believe in yourself and believe that it's going to be useful, and just push through that.
And you don't have to do it on your own, right? So reach out to everybody, whether it's in FinSuite Plus, Slack, or Twitter/X, or in a community like mine. Find other people, because it's somehow very comforting when you're not the only one going through it. And they may not have the answers for you, but there is comfort in doing it together. And just knowing that you're not alone. Definitely.
Thanks everyone for coming today. I had a blast having this conversation with Glenn. And if you're interested in the WWX course, please go to buildanything.online.
Thanks for having me, Emanuel. It's been a real pleasure. I hope it was useful for people.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And if you like this type of content, hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks. See you next time.